Thanks so much for joining us today. Before we get into your solutions, tell me, where are you right now in terms of the business community in South Sudan and investment, and where do you want to be?
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Michaela, for having me on the show. As part of Africa Business Connect's wider objective, it's mainly connecting private sector opportunities with potential investors. So what we do at Africa Business Connect is we try to encourage investors to be a part of South Sudan's growth story. And in terms of development of the private and business sector, this year marks some of the biggest growth that we have, which is going to be having fiber optics connectivity into the city. This will bring massive opportunities for tech entrepreneurs. Secondly, the electrification of Juba is massive, and we'll start to see industries open up, in fact. In terms of the agricultural sector, which is one of the areas we try to promote, because when you talk about South Sudan, it's always a focus on oil development. So we try to highlight the underdeveloped sectors of agriculture, finance, telecommunication. And you can see the country right now is 5% in use for land cultivation. And that's roughly 2.5 million hectares out of 30 million hectares. So the potential is massive.
So there is opportunity there.
There is definitely opportunity.
You know, we've seen the peace agreement, and we've seen statistics that, you know, there's optimism. Everyone thinks that this is going to be, you know, long-lasting peace in South Sudan now. But is there any justification for some investors having maybe worries or doubts?
Of course, there's been doubts because of the information flow, and possibly the investment environment in the past has not been possibly, you know, conducive for them. But currently we have newly established Revenue Authority, and the South Sudan Investment Authority actually encourages investors. So they protect them through tax incentives. So if you do wish to do business in South Sudan, you will be given tax breaks. So right now there is a changing environment in terms of business. And what we're trying to do is to encourage that growth story and change the narrative so that we can move forward.
Sure, and that actually brings us into one of your solutions. You know, it's true, South Sudan has gotten a bit of a bad rep since independence. How do you think that can change, and what do you think can bring more investment into the country?
The first thing is having more annual forums. The one that we did recently in March was titled Doing Business in South Sudan. And the motto was, be a part of South Sudan's growth story. This focused on the underdeveloped sectors that I mentioned, because so much focus is on oil. We see that agriculture, finance, telecommunication can be the pillars for growth for the country. And one of the ways that we're trying to encourage investors is to connect the private sector with organizations, entrepreneurs globally. So it's also about regional integration in terms of business.
Right.
Yeah.
We saw some work that's been done trying to rebrand South Sudan. You know, Rwanda is known as the land of 1,000 hills, Uganda, the pearl of Africa. What is the proposition for South Sudan?
Right now, currently, it's at the premature stage. But as you've seen in CNN adverts, the Jewel of the Nile is a concept that has actually been put forward. And the Jewel of the Nile concept kind of outlines that South Sudan is one of the jewels, the undiscovered jewels in the River Nile. So one of the countries in East Africa, South Sudan among them, is seen as a potential jewel of the Nile. You're talking about undiscovered potential, mineral wealth, agricultural potential, oil development, and various other sectors, including IT, technology, yes.
In your efforts, have you been getting support from the government? How is the relationship between public and private sector as it stands?
Right now, there's a lot of promotion in terms of public and private sector partnerships. But what we do at Africa Business Connect is we're trying to facilitate forums whereby there can be an exchange of knowledge transfer and also a connection between our private sector, which is pretty small right now, but we're trying to connect them regionally so that business people in Rwanda, in the tech area, can also take advantage of opportunities in South Sudan. So it's also about having the partnership.
Right.
Yes.
Before you go, you know, we just finished up the General Shareholders Meeting for Africa 50. What is something that you hope to see materialized in the near future from that?
I think one of the things is possibly potential partnerships from South Sudan and Rwandan business community, of course. I think with initiatives like Africa 50, there's so much potential in that. When you talk about infrastructure development, there was a lot of conversations about ICT advancements.
Sure.
And these are the areas, of course, as a young person, we're trying to, encourage that
Sure.
more often.
Well, Wek, thank you so much for joining us on
Yeah.
the show today. We look forward to seeing what happens in South Sudan in the near future.
Thank you for having me.